Imagine walking into a kingdom of millions with fewer than 200 men at your side. Standing before a ruler carried on a golden throne, surrounded by soldiers, who outnumber you 1,000 to 1, and then daring to seize him with your own hands. That moment, almost impossible to believe, was the audacious gamble of Francisco Pizarro, the Spanish conquistador who brought down the Inca Empire. His name evokes both awe and infamy. To some, he was a bold adventurer who carved out an empire for Spain. To others, he was a ruthless opportunist whose hunger for wealth left devastation in its wake. His life story is one of rags to riches, of courage and cruelty, of alliances and betrayals. And it all began far from the glittering treasures he would one day seize. Francisco Pizarro was born around 1475 in Trujillo, in the Spanish region of Extremadura. Unlike many conquistadors, he came from extraordinary poverty. His father, Gonzalo Pizarro, was a soldier of noble blood, but Francisco was illegitimate, the son of a peasant woman named Francisca González. Because of this, young Francisco grew up without inheritance, education, or privilege. Illiterate and destitute, he worked as a swineherd in his youth, tending pigs in the fields outside Trujillo. This humble beginning earned him the mocking nickname, the pig herder, but it also gave him toughness and survival skills. For Pizarro, the New World represented a chance to escape obscurity and claim the wealth and honor denied to him in Spain. When he was in his early 20s, Pizarro crossed the Atlantic, sailing for the island of Hispaniola. There, he took part in the early waves of Spanish colonization, working as a soldier and adventurer. In 1510, he joined the expedition of Alonso de Ojeda to Colombia, enduring hunger and hardship in the unforgiving jungles. Later, Pizarro accompanied Vasco Núñez de Balboa on the journey across the Isthmus of Panama in 1513, becoming one of the men who first gazed upon the Pacific Ocean from the Americas. That sight stirred something deep in him, the dream of lands and riches lying beyond. In Panama, Pizarro began to build a reputation. He received land and an encomienda, a grant of indigenous labor, though he was still poor compared to colonial elites. He also entered into politics and military ventures, proving himself ambitious, calculating, and willing to endure hardship for glory. But Pizarro longed for more. Stories circulated of a powerful kingdom far to the south, a land of gold, silver, and mighty rulers. These rumors, whispered by traders and indigenous informants, became the spark for Pizarro's greatest gamble, the conquest of Peru. In 1524, Pizarro teamed up with fellow adventurers Diego de Almagro and Hernando de Luque, forming what became known as the famous 13. Together they financed an expedition to explore the lands to the south. Their first journey was a disaster. The harsh climate, poor supplies, and resistance from native groups forced them to retreat. Many thought the idea of conquering Peru was madness, but Pizarro refused to give up. 2 years later, in 1526, Pizarro launched a second expedition. This time, his ships reached further south, along the coast of modern-day Ecuador and northern Peru. There they encountered signs of wealth, advanced cities, fine textiles, and precious metals. When hardship struck again, and most of the men wanted to return to Panama, Pizarro drew a line in the sand with his sword. He told his men, "On that side lies toil, hunger, nakedness, storms, desertion, and death. On this side, ease and pleasure. Choose." Only 13 men chose to stay with him. They became legends, the famous 13, willing to risk everything for fortune. Eventually, they returned to Panama with proof of the rich lands they had glimpsed. In 1529, Pizarro sailed to Spain to present his case to the crown. He argued that he could conquer these southern lands for Spain if only he were granted permission. King Charles V and his council agreed, issuing the Capitulación de Toledo. This royal decree named Pizarro governor and captain general of any lands he conquered in Peru. Pizarro returned triumphant, his authority confirmed. But tensions brewed with his partner, Diego de Almagro, who felt slighted by the agreement. This rivalry would one day turn deadly. In 1531, Pizarro launched his third and decisive expedition to Peru. He set sail with around 180 men, 27 horses, and a few small cannons. Compared to the vast Inca Empire, with millions of subjects, it seemed like a fool's errand. But timing was on his side. The Incas were reeling from a devastating civil war between two brothers, Atahualpa and Huascar, who fought over the throne. The empire was weakened and divided, an opportunity Pizarro would exploit. In November 1532, Pizarro reached the highland city of Cajamarca, where Atahualpa, the victorious Inca emperor, was encamped with thousands of troops. Despite the overwhelming odds, Pizarro devised a daring plan. He invited Atahualpa to meet in the city square. When the emperor arrived in a golden litter, surrounded by his unarmed nobles, the Spaniards struck. Cannons roared, horses charged, and swords flashed. In the chaos, Pizarro himself seized Atahualpa. In one shocking moment, the Spaniards captured the Inca ruler, paralyzing the empire. Atahualpa, desperate to win his freedom, offered a ransom that stunned the Spaniards. He promised to fill one room with gold and two with silver, one of the greatest treasures ever assembled. Over the following months, his subjects brought immense riches, golden statues, silver vessels, and jewelry beyond imagination. True to his word, Atahualpa filled the ransom rooms. But Pizarro, fearing rebellion, ordered him executed in 1533. The emperor was strangled by garrote, a moment that marked the symbolic end of Inca power. With Atahualpa dead, Pizarro marched to Cusco, the Inca capital. In November 1533, his small force entered the city, claiming it for Spain. Cusco's temples, palaces, and treasures fell into Spanish hands. It was the climax of one of the most audacious conquests in history. To secure his new colony, Pizarro founded a new capital on the coast in 1535, the City of the Kings, later known as Lima. It became the administrative and political heart of Spanish Peru, a legacy that endures to this day. But the partnership between Pizarro and Diego de Almagro unraveled. Their rivalry over power and territory escalated into open conflict. In 1538, Pizarro defeated Almagro in battle and had him executed. This brutal betrayal shocked many, and it sowed seeds of vengeance among Almagro's supporters. On June 26, 1541, that vengeance arrived. A group of Almagro's followers stormed Pizarro's palace in Lima. Though the old conquistador fought bravely with his sword, he was overwhelmed and stabbed to death. Francisco Pizarro, who had risen from a pig herder to a conqueror of an empire, died at around the age of 66. He was buried in Lima, the city he had founded. Pizarro's conquest of the Inca Empire remains one of the most dramatic events in world history. With fewer than 200 men, he toppled a civilization of millions. His victory reshaped South America, bringing it under Spanish rule for centuries. Yet his legacy is bitterly contested. To some, he was a bold adventurer who achieved the impossible. To others, he was a ruthless opportunist whose greed brought untold suffering. He was a man of his age, driven by ambition, faith, and the hunger for glory. Facts about Francisco Pizarro. Pizarro was illiterate for his entire life. He never learned to read or write. He was Hernán Cortés's distant cousin. Both came from Extremadura, Spain. As a boy, he worked as a pig herder, earning him lifelong mockery. He survived multiple disastrous expeditions before finally conquering Peru. Only 13 men joined him in his famous stand during the second expedition. Pizarro personally seized Atahualpa during the capture at Cajamarca. The ransom of Atahualpa remains one of the largest treasures ever assembled. Pizarro founded Lima, today the capital of Peru. He executed his former partner, Diego de Almagro, after defeating him. Pizarro was assassinated in his own palace by Almagro's supporters. Francisco Pizarro's life was a story of impossible ambition. From the fields of Trujillo to the throne rooms of the Inca, he proved that determination and daring could overturn empires. Yet his legacy is also a warning of what ambition can cost: cultures lost, lives destroyed, and a world forever changed. He was a man of contradictions, poor yet powerful, illiterate yet cunning, loyal yet treacherous. His story challenges us to think about the forces that shape history: greed, courage, betrayal, and vision. In the end, Pizarro reminds us that history is never simple. It is written by those who dare the impossible, and by those who pay the price.